Hey, let's talk a little bit about cross-filter, a library that allows you to filter data across many dimensions and helps you build in these type of technologies or visualizations where you have connected views, and then you can, for instance, in this dataset that is the FIFA dataset, you can see that overall players with a low value of like overall qualification, they are usually younger players. And then if I keep on going up, as you see in here, then the players that have the highest rankings usually tend to have like older ages. So let's see how to build something like that. So for that, we are going to start with an empty notebook. Let's go and create, say that this is going to be cross-filter. We are going to be using D3, although probably in this one we are not going to use it that much. And then you need to use cross-filter, that it's also an NPM library. I recommend you using crossfilter 2, I think it's what's called. Notice the 2, that is not the version, it's actually the package name. So if you search for crossfilter, you're going to find the original library that, if I'm not mistaken, was made by Mike Bostock when he was working at Square. And then after that, like Square stopped working on it, and it was started to be developed by the community in like in a general like open source way. So if you see here, this is the other version, and the package for this one is crossfilter 2. Okay, so this is especially important because when you're searching for examples and things like that, usually it's very difficult to find like the specific ones that are for crossfilter 2. Okay, so having done that, let's get some data. So for this, I am going to be using my FIFA dataset that is just like the Kaggle FIFA dataset. So let's load it in here, and then we can load it in here just by saying that we're going to be using a file attachment of, let's leave this time for finishing, and then loading this thing. After doing that, you can see that we have 18,000 rows, and then it has a ton of information. But one of the things is that when you load it as CSV, it doesn't get the numbers right. So I like passing this like in this way. Like I can say something like, let's wait for this to finish, if I can spell properly. And then you say that I want to map this through D3 autotype. And D3 autotype, it's formatting for D3 CSV. And what it does is that it searches and tries to guess what is the proper type of each one of the attributes. So as you see in there, like these were converted to numbers. So the first thing you need to do is to create a cross-filter of your data. So you do something like cross-filter out of the data, and then it gets you something like this. This is an object that has a ton of functions that are very helpful with working with your data. Then after doing that, then you need to start creating dimensions. So let's say, for instance, that we're gonna create filter on the, let's say, for instance, the age or the overall position. So when you do that, basically what you want is to say that on your cross filter, you're going to create a dimension that it's going to be, and then you pass in here a function that needs an accessor, like something like d dot, and then you can say position. So let's say that this is going to be my d position, and then as you see in here, like it's another object that has a ton of methods. Like the important method from this one is that you can do something like filter, but this is only going to be apparent when we create another dimension. So, and then the other thing that you can do with dimensions is that you can group them, and I like saving them as groups. Like let's say my group position equals this, and then you, in grouping, you also can pass like how do you want to do the grouping, or in this case like just general one, as I'm doing in there. So while doing that, then you can start seeing the power of this, and is that if you, from this one, you say give me the 20 top positions, this is going to return an object that has the keys and values that you can use for creating, for instance, a bar chart. So usually the next thing you will do is to try to draw that in like a histogram or something like that. So for that, I actually created one, that is this one in here, that is an extension of the Reusable example that I had, but for bar charts. If we have the time, if this video don't get too long, then I'm going to show you how to do it. But for the moment, let's just import on this, although that one has a lot of errors. And then let's use that one. So when I do this, then I can say I want to import the bar chart. I think it's called Reusable bar chart. And then let's import that from this. And then that gives me that. And then the only thing that you need for drawing this thing is to actually do something like this. You need to say where you want to draw it. Like in this case, I'm just going to draw it in a div. And then inside that, let's say this is going to be my div. And then return that div. And we can draw this using something like D3, select that div. And then inside that, you can say, like for instance, I'm going to append another one. And you're going to see why in a minute. I'm appending a new one. You need to bind the data. In this case, I'm going to use the group of the position and then say that I'm going to take like the top 10 positions. And then you just call the chart that you create. So for this, I need to create my chart. So let's say like this is going to be a histogram of position. So I need to create my chart, and my chart is just going to be an instance of position. It's just going to be an instance of my brushable bar chart module. And then this one, it's configurable. So you can say that the X position is going to be d.value. So this needs to be an accessor. I think I actually made it such that it should be like the string only. So it should be like this. And then I need the Y to be the key, because remember, when you see this grouping, then you get key and value. And that's what we need to do it that way. And then let's leave it like that for the moment. And then we can start changing things in a moment. So of course, like you need to use the same name here and there. Position, the other one say postion, then classical John, and then you get this one. Okay, so the nice thing is that now you can brush on this one, and the key for that is that actually while using that you can pass a function in here that says this is going to be my own brush, and this receives not a D but a selection. Excuse me. So I can actually say like which ones are selected and then pass here my selection. So something like this. And then if I show here on the console, like this one, it's coming from the original module. And then this one in here, it's saying that my selection, it has like 3 keys, as you see in here. So, excuse me. So having done that, then you can start thinking on how to build this. Let's say that, for instance, I don't want one, but I want more than one. So let's try to wrap up and group all of that into like some reusable code that you can build with multiple attributes. So I'm going to create a listing here of the attributes that I want. So I'm going to say, and this could be like something selectable, like the name, and then the overall, not the name, like the name is not very repeated, but the nationality. And then we saw the relationship between the overall and the age. So I have these 4 ones. So I will need to repeat this whole thing for the 4 of those. So usually what I like doing is that I like putting here, like especially if I'm doing this in Observable, like you can actually use this outside Observable. So, but if you're doing in Observable, I like making sure that all of these are kept in the same cell. So one way of doing that, it's like for instance, you can say let attribute of attributes. And this way can be a little bit more readable. And then we can say that I'm going to keep a track of all of my dimensions, and I like putting that as part of the CS object, so I have to pass it as a parameter. I can do that. So let's say here I'm going to be my dimensions, and this is going to be a map. So I can actually go from dims. I can say do something like A equals, and then I just pass in here what is going to be my dimension. So before doing that, let's create the dimension in here. So I can use this exact same code, but it's faster just to write it again. It's my dimension, and then my accessor is going to be D on the attribute A. Okay, so, and actually one trick that I learned when I was building this, preparing for this video, is that we can convert it into a string, and that can be useful because this data has a lot of garbage on it. So just by doing this, I am at least removing extra space before and after, which that I found in there. So if this is a number, then it will convert it. Actually, this gives me trouble with numbers. So actually, let's leave it like it was, because I want, otherwise I will lose the ability of selecting by numbers. And then once I have done that, then I can say I'm going to save my group in my dimension in here. And then I can do the same with my groups, and then say that the group for this one is going to be this. So it's just taking my dimension as I did in here, and then grouping that. So of course, what that means is that I will also need to create here a groups. That is also going to be another map. Having done that, then I don't really need this one anymore. I don't need this one either, or this one. So I just have everything in the same position. And then for drawing, I can do basically the same thing. So what I'm going to do in here is that I could do another for loop in here over the attributes, but since this is the tree, actually what I could do is that I can just do data binding with the different attributes. So let's see if I can pull that one off. So instead of doing the append if, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to select all of my charts. And then from those, I'm going to do data binding with my attributes. And then I need to do, like, instead of append, I need to do join. So I'm going to create a new div for each one of my charts. Then having done that, then I will need to, let's do this on a call. So, and actually instead of a call, I will do it on each. And remember, the difference between each and call is that with each, you get a function that takes the whatever parameter you have. And so in this case, like my datum. So since these are my attributes, then this is going to be each one of my attributes. And then what I'm going to do in there is that with call, you have the advantage that the function gets past the selection. But with each, and that's the reason why I use a function instead of an arrow function, you can use this for accessing the selection. So we can do something like this. The tree select this. That is going to select to take the current selection. And then on that one, I can just put the other elements that I have. Okay. So having done that, then I just need to get what is my group for this specific attribute. And remember that we created that on my groups. I just need to do something like this. That is going to get me my groups. And then this is going to return the top 10 elements. Okay. So with that, if we leave it like this, then this should be select all, I think. And then we have it. So now I have a histogram for each one of those. Like these ones are quite big. So one of the tricks you can use is that you can say this is going to be a DisplayFlex. And then you can also say that these ones are going to be, like, let's say the width divided by the attributes length times 2. And then let's say that the height is going to be like 600, or like maybe too much. And then let's say I'm going to do it like this. They're still too big. And you can also pass that same attribute for the width of the chart, which is the way that the divs are going to know that they don't have that they should wrap. Let's make this a little bit smaller, and then when I join the div, Let's first add the class chart that I forgot. And then I'm also going to change the style width to be this one. So, but this one's still not wrapping. So let me see what this is doing in here. I'm getting a bunch of errors down there. So each one of my group is going to be one of this. And then basically what I want is to come up with a chart, and it should have a width of, like, say 200 pixels. And this one, what this one says, and you need to know how to write width, come on. That's better, but this is still not doing it. DisplayFlex. So it seems like I have an error in there. I wonder what can be. It looks exactly the same. Seatley. Thank you, John. So it should be something like this. So now it's like moving as I expected. Okay. So the other thing you can do is that you can say, I don't want to see like the top 10 elements. I actually want to see all the elements. And then after doing that, that works very well for this, but for everything but for the nationality. So we can do a trick in here for that, like hand code a little bit of that. And then we can say that in here, like my data is going to be this one, like just to separate it and have it more clear. So if A equals nationality, then we return not this, but the top 10. And then if not, then we return like all the elements. And then with that, data. Then with that, we have like something like this. Now, my problem is that now I have the filter. I should be able to see with this, like what are the ones that are being filtered, but I'm not seeing changes on the other ones. So I need to start doing that. So for doing that, I need to do two things. Like the first one is that I need to create one of these for each one of my charts. So for that one, I will need to do for let A of attributes. And then let's say that we're going to do the same thing in here. So we are going also to create a map of this one. And then, right, selecting so much. So let's put that inside the for loop. And then basically save, like let's say this is going to be the chart. And then like just charts.set on A, it's going to be charts. And then having done that, then the opposite in here it's true. So you do charts.get of A. So it's going to get the specific one. Now, having done that, then what I can do is that, and this is where it starts getting interesting. So remember that you have here this selection. So basically what you can do with that is that you can take your cross filter, and then you take the dimensions on the position on the attribute A, and then on that dimension, you're going to create a filter, okay? So that filter, if you check the documentation for cross filter, I think, where will that be? Maybe here on the wiki. TypeScript, API reference, here. So if you go and take a look at how the filter function works, like filter, it's going to take 4 types of values. You can have a specific value like this, or you can have a function, or you can have null, or you can have 2 like an array. But if it is an array, only the first 2 elements are going to use for a range. So we need to take that into account when we are implementing our viewing here. So the way of doing that is that, remember that what we can return in there, it's actually all the data that it's selected. So I'm going to get all the keys in here. And then I'm going to say this is going to be the selection getting d.key, okay? Since like all my data has the keys, then that's exactly what I want. So then I have those keys, and then like one easy way of going with this will be passing a function and saying that if the keys, that it's a list, includes D, then that is the element that is selected, then it should be included. Now, I also want to check if the keys doesn't have any length. So if this equals 0, then I should return null, and if not, then I return that function. Does that make sense? So once more, what I'm doing in there, and of course, like this, it's failing somewhere. Apply is not a function. What could be my error? Let's see if it is something with this for the moment. So it doesn't like that. Oh, here, like it should be a chart. There we go. And then like that's better. And then the final thing that I need, because like my cross filter is going to be updating, but I will not be like rethrowing these things. So what I can actually do is that I can say this is going to be inside an update function. And then the first time I call my update function, and then after that, every time I update this thing, I just call update on my own. So this observable is saying that it's not seeing the function, but seeing, like in JavaScript, functions are actually hoist to the top of the application. So if you do something like that, then now you can select elements in here. It seems like I have an error in my brush, as you can see in there, that it's not highlighting as I expected, but at least now I can see that everything else is changing. And then if I select 2 of those, then I can also see the elements. So of course this could be improved in many ways. Like I need to make sure, like one of the problems I think this has is that it's not letting me clear the selections very properly. But this one seems to be working fine. So you can also select, like, but this is one of the things that bothers me, as you can see in there. But the whole idea is like it's just a matter of improving the module that I'm using. The key in here is how to use cross filter. So once more, the way you use cross filter is that you take your data, you wrap it on a cross filter, and then you start creating dimensions for each one of the attributes that you want to filter on. And those dimensions will have a convenient group function that allows you to create a histogram for that specific dimension. So if you want to filter on that dimension, then you can, like on a histogram on that dimension, then you can do it with a group like this. And then one of the other keys is that when you apply a filter, and that we are doing that in here, like that filter, it's only going to be modifying the attributes for, I mean, you're only going to see results on all the other dimensions, that it's properly discussed in the documentation, as you can see. So take that into account when you're building your examples. And with that, then you can create your own cross-filter visualization. I hope you liked it.